second in a series of 10 CLE webinars. Today's webinar is titled Negotiating Skills for Mediators, Part 1, Civil. There's a second part next year, which will be Negotiating Skills Divorce. Today's presenter is Peter Phillips. Peter is an arbitrator and mediator practicing through Business Conflict Management LLC in Montclair, New Jersey. He's a Distinguished Adjunct Professor and Director of the ADR Skills Program at New York Law School. He's a member of NJAPM, Garibaldi Inns of Court, IMI, ABA, and NJSBA, and other organizations. He's the author, editor, chapter editor, contributor of 8 books. He trains mediators for the New York State courts and conducts negotiation and client representation training nationally and internationally. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much, Carl, and it's wonderful to be with everybody again. I think the first time I walked in the door of NJAPM was like 15 years ago. And there's no place that's quite as welcoming as this place has been. It's just wonderful to be with everybody again, even though we're on Zoom.
Yes, well, I now turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. As Carl mentioned, I have been teaching negotiation for law schools, and I've also been engaged in training mediators and attorneys with respect to how to represent clients in mediation. And it has become more and more clear to me that a lot of attorneys have never really been trained in representing clients, either in mediation or even in straightforward negotiation. Certainly, a lot of us who mediate regularly will attest that maybe more often than not, during mediation, it is attorney incompetence, attorney lack of skills in representing clients in mediation that often really raises obstacles to trying to get to yes in a deal. At least it does, I think, in the civil commercial area where I practice. I thought, therefore, it would be helpful if we spent an hour revisiting principles of negotiation. With some people, there may be something new. With all of us, I hope there may be something that when you refresh it, becomes all the more useful. Do you know what I mean? So let me pull up the ubiquitous screen. Can't do anything these days without a screen. The object of this hour is going to be to remind mediators the fundamentals of interest-based negotiation so that while you're in the room trying to help people towards a negotiated settlement, you're doing so in an informed way. When something happens in the room, you can put a name on it and you could recognize what it is. And you can use that to assist the parties in trying to get to a mutually advantageous outcome. We're going to go back, in other words, to negotiating skills with an eye to mediation skills. I encourage us, at least for the purpose of this presentation, to recognize that mediation is simply the process of facilitating a negotiation. As a facilitator, we often end up assisting the parties in ways that they couldn't themselves, particularly as the parties approach impasse in their negotiation. We frequently are able to assist them in overcoming the threat of impasse. So yes, we add value, but the thing that we're adding value to is not a mediation, okay? The thing we're adding value to is a negotiation. So you can say that mediation is the action of mediating between parties to effect an agreement between those parties. Do you know what I mean? It's the parties that are the object, and we're there to oil the wheels. More to the point, okay, mediation often turns out to be negotiation with adult supervision. The presence of the mediator accentuates the positive and renunciates the negative, right? We're there in order to keep that negotiation on track. In instances where, were it not for the neutral third party, the attorneys might lose sight of what's going on. How do we do that? We do it because we understand what's at stake, often better than the parties themselves, and because we're skilled at observing their negotiation and directing them in positive areas. I'm sure that you've all seen this one. Oh, by the way, I'm used to, you know, dealing with people in a room, and I haven't lost that habit when we do Zoom. So when I say, you know, has anybody seen this before, and what do you understand it to mean? Would you mind just clicking the raise hand thing, and we can talk about that? So my question to you is, what's this all about? It's almost a cliche, this picture. You see it in a lot of negotiation training and a lot of mediation trainings. Other than, you know, an outtake from Titanic, what do you understand this to be? Anybody? John Sands, hey buddy, how are you?
Okay, just fine. Hope all's well.
Yeah, I'm very happy. You know, we'll see how I feel in 50 minutes.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
What do you understand this to signify in terms of negotiation, John?
In terms of negotiations, the top 10% is the positions that people are expressing, and the bottom 90% is what's really at issue.
Right.
The interest, where ultimately they're trying to get, or what they're trying to accomplish, and to the extent that there is, we can identify mutual interests that they haven't identified or haven't been willing to disclose, we can structure something.
That makes tremendous sense to me, John. When you, because you do it way more often than I, when you represent a party, if you represent the Players League, or you represent management in basketball, do you open that negotiation with the top or with the bottom?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. I mean, you know, what would a well-counseled representative of a party, how would he open the negotiation?
You know, that's so open-ended.
Yeah, true enough.
If I were representing a party, there would have been some groundwork before we started the negotiation. Personal conversations with the adversary's attorney, and negotiating with my own client.
Yeah, true enough. This is what you get for asking a question of a sophisticated attorney. Let me answer my own question, John, and see whether you disagree with it. If I wanted to buy a car, the way I would open the negotiation is not saying why I need the car or the terms in which I need the car. Or what I would say is, you know, I'll give you $2,000 for it. What I would
I understand what you're saying. The position. You know, and of course the challenge is to avoid saying the first number, because that
Well, that's another thing. Yeah. But in
sure,
terms of this
you know, if 2,000 is the book value of the car, where do you want to get? Do you want the car? Do you want the deal?
Right.
You know, and what alternatives are there? There are so many preparation
exactly right.
issues.
I agree with you. I agree with you completely. All the point I'm just trying to make, and Bruce, I'm going to ask you in a minute. The point I'm trying to make is that the stuff on top isn't wrong, with the stuff on top being or the bottom being the rich stuff. It's all a good thing, and indeed, a well-counseled party is going to open with a position, and that position is going to be aggressive, and that's okay. You know what I mean? That's well advised, and it's a good place to start. Bruce,
absolutely.
What's on that? Bruce Walter.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, what I see in this is that what we see above the waterline, that's the opening offer. That's intended to perhaps set both a sense of the aspiration of that person, their ideal outcome. We would really like this, as you say, expressing position, as well as perhaps some less clear and articulated interests. And all of that stuff beneath the surface, that's the additional value that the person would prefer not to have to give up or give away, or even maybe identify. I may be getting a little bit ahead of the terminology, but way down there, it's the reservation point. What's the point of the least acceptable deal that I can make here and still be okay?
Right, that's very helpful. We're going to get to a reservation point in a minute, but the interests are the things that are going to drive the positions, right? The bid ask is going to be the positions, but they're driven by the ultimate business outcome. Now, again, I remind you, we're going to be talking about civil commercial here. I'm not going to be talking about family law. I'm only going to be talking about business disputes or employment disputes or things like that, okay? So you all have seen Getting to Yes. And I just want to make sure that we all understand or remember the 4 points that are in Getting to Yes, and one of them is that iceberg. We want to make sure that our bid and ask are not being simply thrown out there with this sense of belligerence or competition or competitiveness. Instead, they're thrown out in order to serve what our ultimate business goal is. The well-trained negotiator is going to make bids that serve his interest, not bids that simply are big bids. The position reflects the ultimate interest, and the success of the negotiation is measured not by how close to your opening position it was, but rather, did you get as rich and as valuable a deal as you hoped you could, considering your interests? The second principle of Getting to Yes is that we're going to deal with problems and we're not going to deal with people. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Can I ask somebody who, like, I know several of you just read Getting to Yes before you went to bed last night. And with respect, maybe some of those people can remember what is that chapter called? Problems, Not People. Anybody remember that? What Fisher and Urey are recommending that you do is that you agree with your counterparty while you're negotiating to solve the problem that's in front of us. The issue isn't the counterparty you're negotiating with. If you can convert or reframe the topic of the negotiation to a shared problem, the likelihood that you're going to end up with a high value outcome is enhanced. I'm reminded when I was a kid, we used to go to the shore in Ocean City, right? And one of the things that we did the night we got there was to dump a jigsaw onto the dining room table. And as the week went on, people would just go buy the jigsaw puzzle, and they might, spend, 5 minutes looking for a corner piece or looking for a side piece or looking for one that's purple. And it became the family's endeavor to fix the jigsaw. And by the time that we were done, almost always the jigsaw was fixed, solved. That idea of working on the problem together with an eye to your own interest, because a solved problem that's solved on terms that benefit your client, that's what success is. Objective measuring. Objective measuring means, how do you know 50 is the right number? Why do you say 50? What's that about? Objective measuring in cars is like Kelley Blue Book, or in real estate, it's like whatever comps your realtor has. Something that you can't control and that the counterparty can't control, that gives you a sense of value. Now, the thing that you're selling or buying may vary from that. It may be a better car. It may be a fixer-upper house, and you can bargain about that. But if somebody is trying to buy my BMW, which has 114,000 miles on it, when I bought it used, and they say 2,000, what I'm probably going to say is, where did you get the number? Silly me, I looked it up in Kelley Blue Book and it says 11,000, but you tell me, maybe it is 2. Where did you get the number? The availability of objective measuring, objective value setting is really helpful when you're trying to find the right number. And the last one is generating options. Now, this is where the fun comes in, of course, and it's a what if series of questions. I understand that I want 11 for it, and you don't want to pay more than 10 for it. What if I delivered it? Would you pay 11 then? Or what if I threw in the snow tires? What if? What are some options we have? And I'm not saying I'm willing to throw in the snow tires. What I'm saying is, would that be interesting to you? Would that prompt you to raise your price if we agreed to do it? So we're generating options, and they're for mutual gain. It doesn't make any sense to generate an option which is, oh, I have an idea, you pay me more. That's not an option for mutual gain. Option for mutual gain is something that fits that guy's interests, which is to own this BMW and drive it all year round, and satisfies my interest, because, to be absolutely honest with you, and I'm not going to tell him this, but I've already bought a replacement car, and I really need the 11s because I maxed out, and I really, 10 won't do me. So I'm happy to go ahead and throw in some non-monetary value in order to try to get him to do 11. That's my interest. My interest is to make sure I get rid of this hunk of stuff, so that I can begin financing my new car. So we try to, I don't want to reveal that to him, but that's why I'm trying to think of options for mutual gain. Getting to yes encourages, in other words, not necessarily full disclosure, but interest-driven bargaining that is based on some kind of a reliable scale that everybody accepts. Everybody accepts Kelley Blue Book, and that may be tweaked in order to have advantages to it. Now, can you count the number of people who don't know how to do this that you've recently mediated with? They just don't think this way. They come in saying, I want the piano. And I'll tell you what, in addition to that, I want the piano. And if you don't give me the piano, I'm out of here. Do you know what I mean? This kind of belligerent, demanding, positional exchange, to the extent there's an exchange at all. So, before we leave it, I just want to reflect. What does the title mean? getting to yes? Does it mean getting to fair, for example? Does it mean getting what you want in negotiation? Does it mean being a nice guy so everybody thinks you're a terrific person? None of those. It means getting to yes. It means getting to yes. And it's a distinction that I think it behooves professionals not only to recognize, but to live in that space. We're here to get our clients to yes. It's not our job to decide what is in our client's interest. Our client does that. It's not our job to make sure that we are Birkenstock wearing, tree hugging, wonderful, people. That's not the object. That's not why we pay attention to the 4 principles in getting to yes. And we have to keep reminding our clients the point of a negotiation is not to get what you want, it's to get what you need. It's to get what your ultimate interest is. We're not going to say yes to any deal that doesn't incorporate your ultimate interest. So don't worry about that. Now, Bruce introduced the idea of a reservation point. Bruce, tell us what you understand a reservation point to be.
Sure, thanks, Peter. The way that I understand it, it is the least acceptable terms. It is, as I understand it, the quantification of one's best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Bingo, bingo, bango, absolutely right. And a reservation point is a noun. It's almost always a number, actually. You have a bid for, I have a bid for my BMW. My neighbor will buy it for $4,000. That means any bid that I get in this negotiation that is not north of $4,000 doesn't make any economic sense to me because I have an option. So the reservation point is the point below which the deal doesn't make sense. It can be a perfectly reasoned number. It can be absolutely fine. It could be everything the person can afford. It could have everything going for it. But with respect to my client, if it doesn't make economic sense, if it's below or as a seller above the reservation point, then it doesn't work. Okay. Now, Bruce also mentioned the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Now, the difference between these two things is that the BATNA is a verb and the RP is a noun. Okay, the BATNA is what you're going to do. My RP in the example I just made is $4,000. That's a noun. My BATNA is I'm going to sell it to my neighbor for $4,000. It's a course of action. And I'm not splitting hairs here. The client really needs to understand that what are you going to do if this craters? What are you going to do? What's going to happen to you? What's going to happen to your mortgage? What's going to happen to your marriage? What are your competitors going to say about you? What are the consequences of cratering this negotiation? Now, if you're willing to do that, and if the value of what's on the table isn't as high as that is, let's do it. Let's crater it, right? But let's crater it knowing the BATNA. Let's not crater it because somehow they won't come to your number. Let's crater it intelligently because the BATNA is a better course of action than saying yes.
Peter, while you're taking a breath, let me read the first attendance code. So the first attendance code is 9007. 9007.
That sounds like a pretty good price for my BMW car. Okay, I just want to hit a few other terms so that we're using them intelligently when we try to facilitate these people's negotiation, okay? And one is leverage. Leverage is a concept that pretty much every negotiator uses, and as far as I can tell, pretty much no negotiator uses intelligently. Does anybody want to put their head on the block and offer an explanation of what they mean when they say, I think the other guy has more leverage than we have, or I think we have the leverage here, let's press it. What does that mean? How do you know whether you have leverage? No takers? Yeah, go ahead, Bob Lenrow. Bob Lenrow, is your hand up? You want to, there you go.
Now I'm unmuted.
Okay, now you're all set.
All right, I just said it's about power and your assessment of power.
Meaning you're able to hit the guy on the other side of the table over the head with a baseball bat? I mean, when you say power, how is power expressed in a negotiation?
In the limiting the options that are available.
Ah, you're sort of in a corner. You don't have as many exit ramps as the other guy has.
Yes.
Shakira,
Or that's your perception.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Shakira, what are your thoughts? Shakira, you had your hand up at one point. Well, the definition of leverage that I like to use, mainly because it's easier to see as a mediator, is the guy who has the better BATNA has the leverage. To the extent that you get to know the two parties, and by the way, it's very difficult for one of the attorneys to accurately assess the other guy's BATNA. So one attorney may think that she has leverage, and who knows, she may be right, but it's a very difficult thing unless it's obvious, okay? The test is, if this thing craters, who is worse off? Who gets hurt more by this negotiation failing? That's the person who has less leverage. So once you measure it that way and make an assessment, yeah, Bob is right. The person with the more attractive BATNA might be in a position to dictate terms a little more, because if it craters, the other guy's hurt more. The trouble is your guy is hurt too. And so the utility of determining who has the leverage is a little limited, you know what I mean? We're fooling around to some degree with deck chairs on the Titanic. Are we better off drowning from, you know, the stateroom or drowning from the observation deck? Because, you know, as long as we can get this thing up into the bargaining area, it's in nobody's interest that this thing craters. And I'm only being a little bit didactic about that because I think as a mediator, it's helpful for you to coach these guys into a more disciplined understanding of what leverage is and what leverage isn't, and who has it. And who is going to be hurt more if this negotiation crashes. We've done interest in positions. There are some negotiations that are distributive. In fact, there's this guy named Dwight Golan who writes a bunch of books and is a wonderful trainer of negotiation and mediation. He insists that 80% of negotiation is distributive. It's almost always what he calls a dance for dollars. You're talking about, you know, forget about the winter tires and all that kind of thing. Ultimately, all right, I want to maximize the amount of dollar bills that I get for my car, and the buyer wants to minimize the amount that they spend, and that's what we have here. It's a distributive bargaining. Throwing in the winter tires, throwing in the delivery and all that makes it what we call integrative. It adds value that was not anticipated. And almost always distributive bargaining becomes integrative bargaining when you understand the other side's interest and feed it. When you begin to realize what would turn them on and you supply it, then all of a sudden you have value-added outcomes. This is called a Zopa, okay? And this too is very close to what Bruce was talking about. A Zopa is a zone of possible agreement. This is applicable only for mediators. Negotiators never know. Until they say yes, they never know whether there's a Zopa in a bargain. A Zopa is, you know, when I'm selling my car, I won't sell it for less than $4,500, and I'd love to get $7,000 for it. And the buyer would love to pay nothing for it and won't pay more than $5,000. That is the buyer's RP. That $45,000 is the seller's RP. And because the RPs overlap, there is a Zopa here. There's a Zopa here. There is a $500 Zopa. So you, as somebody who is monitoring that negotiation, knows that if this thing craters, it's their fault because it's sitting there like low-hanging fruit. This is going to be a yesable deal. Now, they don't know that. And it is not helpful for you to tell them that, and except in some instances. But as somebody who is intelligently monitoring the negotiation, it's very helpful for you to determine whether they're wasting their time. If the seller's RP is $6,000 and the buyer's RP is $5,000, it's not going to happen. There is no Zopa. Okay, is that clear to everybody, I hope? So,
but if there's a,
go ahead.
If there's a way of adding value or perceived value to the RP, you can create a Zopa if it's a source of value the parties hadn't considered before.
Right. It could be that throwing in the winter tires could change their RP. All I want us to understand as professional negotiation observers is what a Zopa is, and the fact that neither party will see it. It's a gift that we are given. We are able to determine whether there's a Zopa. We are able to know whether the winter tires might create a Zopa. But the parties, in our absence, the parties usually can't, they just can't see that. Because everybody's misleading each other and telling lies and, saying this is my bottom line and all this other crap. And, you know what I mean? They're just making it difficult. I just want to make sure we all understand that one of our jobs as a negotiation coach is to seek the Zopa. So here are some of the mindsets of the lawyer who is negotiating. He's not there to persuade. It's not trial. He's not there to persuade the neutral. He's also not there to persuade the facilitator of the negotiation. He's there to collaboratively craft a yesable outcome. He's there to identify his own client's interests and find out what the other guy's interests are, right? And devise outcomes that incorporate them both. Devise outcomes that are yesable. He knows what's yesable to his client. It's hard to find out what's yesable for the other guy. That's his job. Okay? And if you're still getting no all the time, what's the obstacle? It's sometimes you just say it out loud. Can you tell me why you keep saying no? What is it that you need me to do? I mean, what's the problem? What is it that your client still has difficulty with? Because I'd love to address it, because I'd love for this deal to close. Talk to me. Okay. and then devise ways devise ways to remove that obstacle that's consistent with your client's outcome, right? And in the end, can you imagine how much easier it is when you have an informed observer who is trusted? I mean, whoa, this is exactly the key to the door, isn't it? This is exactly why we add value to negotiation. That's exactly why facilitate negotiation is so much more promising, okay? The key, obviously, I think, is, as far as, you know, the participants are concerned, you have to sit there and listen. You have to ask the right questions and listen to the answer. And you have to be willing to work with the other guy to find a yesable solution. All right, can everybody see this comic strip? Could you just take 30 seconds to read it, please? This is a negotiation that cratered. And in light of what we've just been discussing, why did it crater? My suggestion, by the way, is that it lies in the third panel, the one that says, he's my favorite player. What happens in that panel that kills the entire negotiation? Terry?
Hi, Peter. I can't read it, it's too small, but your clue there was the fact that there was favoritism shown, and that links to mistrust from the other party that the negotiation will be fair.
So you think that, well, I mean, they don't have a mediator with them, they're just dealing with each other directly. When Charlie Brown says, do you want to negotiate? You know, what does she say?
As I can't read here, I was trying to use your clue to link it to mediation. Yeah. I can't get the screen larger. Thank you.
Oh, bummer. Bruce, what's the problem with what happens between panel 3 and panel 4?
Yeah, well, what I'm seeing is that the two parties here, Charlie Brown and Lucy, each have very different underlying interests and motivations.
They do, and Bob, Bruce, that's okay. The trouble is, when Charlie Brown said, do you want to talk about that? You know, do you want to trade? He then proceeded to trade. He didn't wait for her. He didn't wait to find out whether she wants to or not. He just went at it and made an offer. To which her response is, meh. In fact, on the beginning of the second line, she says, I don't want to trade. And there he is, right? Making offers and sweetening offers and doing all that sort of thing and not listening to the fact that she is not interested in trading. He ups his bid. Finally, she says, I don't want to trade. I think Joe Schlabotnik is kind of cute. What does that tell us? Now, you know, we're attentive. We've taken Phillips's 1 hour, you know, presentation. When the other side says, I think he's cute, what have we just heard? We've heard her interest. She likes baseball cards of cute baseball players. Okay, now, if we're going to advise, if we were Charlie Brown's advisor at this point, before we move on, what would we suggest to Charlie Brown his next move should be? What I would tell Charlie is, yeah, he is cute, I agree. Here's 50 baseball cards. Pick 5 of the cutest and trade it for 1 Joe Schlabotnik, right? In other words, you're feeding into her interest, making sure that the outcome is satisfactory to her. She has more value than she had to start with, and you fall on the ground and thank God above that finally you have a Joe Schlabotnik card. But does it happen? No. Why doesn't it happen? He doesn't listen. He continues to offer things that have no value to her. And of course she's going to, what does she care about Larry Jackson and Warren Spahn and Duke Snyder? He's not hearing what her interest is, and therefore he's not negotiating to get to yes. She's never going to get to yes. And what happens? For 5 years, I've been trying to, mind you, I think Charlie Brown is either 6 or 7. So we're saying from the time of infancy, he's been trying to get a Joe Schlabotnik card. He was within 3 feet of it, right? And he didn't get it. Worse yet, she doesn't give it to him. She destroys the card. So you have an economic loss, a global economic loss. There's now 1 fewer Joe Schlabotnik card. Why? Because he didn't listen to the counterparty. He didn't listen to the counterparty. It is not brain surgery. Deals close when the offer on the table is better for each party than the best alternative to saying yes is for any party. Therefore, a yesable deal happens when you find out what the other guy needs, and then you devise an outcome that incorporates both what you need and what the other guy needs, with as much as possible coming to you. Because your job is always to maximize your client's return, right? I mean, beating the other guy is irrelevant. It's just not an acceptable standard. And that is news to 85% of the lawyers that I deal with as a mediator. Critical question is why and why not? I don't think so. I'm not interested in trading. Why? Well, because I think Joe Schlabotnik is cute. Why? Oh, I don't know. I just think he's cute. That's all. Well, listen, do you like the way this guy looks, or these 5 guys look, or these 10 guys look? Are they cute? Well, this guy is, this guy isn't. Would you be interested in trading some of them for the Joe Schlabotnik card? Okay, it's why, or when they say no, I'm not interested in trading. Why not? Why not? Okay, now I have asked Felicia and Bob if they would please take roles in a brief negotiation. I wonder, Carl, should I stop sharing and can we bring them up, or how should we do this technically?
Yes, stop sharing.
All right. Before I do, I just want to warn both Felicia and Bob that you were given information that would cause you to deal with the other side, with a certain amount of caution or skepticism. I've said that to both of you. Please follow the business requirements, determine what your underlying interests are, and treat the other side with the appropriate amount of care.
Okay, so Felicia and Bob, if you would raise your hands, I'll make you into panelists. Okay, there's Felicia. I've promoted you, Felicia, into a panelist. Bob, okay, and you are a panelist too. Unmute yourselves. And while you're doing that, let me read the second attendance code, which is 3737. Again, 3737.
All right, Bob and Felicia, just go at this. We're not going to spend a long time, and have a go, 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So why don't we wait for Bob? Are you coming on?
Bob, would you turn your camera on, please? There you
I
go.
was just looking to do that. Okay. All right. So,
Okay, so I'm gonna start
we-
because Bob and I did not speak before this. So this is our first attempt at negotiating, and I'm going to start because I have called Bob into this meeting because I am general counsel for a company called Suntech, and Suntech is an organization that is under contract with our government to do research on methods to combat enemy uses of chemical warfare. And Bob's company.
Felicia,
Yes.
if I can interrupt, I suggest that you deal with Bob directly and tell him rather
Okay,
than
so
us.
then this is just between Bob and I, and everybody is
Sure
just.
It's absolutely. We want to see you try to cut this deal.
Okay, all right. So Bob, thank you so much for joining me today. You understand the confidential nature of this. This is because we have such a good rapport together. I thought that I could speak to you candidly. Yes, there have been a lot of problems with our companies, and we still have those 2 pending lawsuits, but I wanted to step away from all of that today to see if we could try to handle an imminent threat to our country. We have an emergent matter that's taking place right now down in Riverbank, South Carolina, right outside of Columbia, which has University of South Carolina in it, and is really close to Charleston, Augusta, and Charlotte. There's an old nuclear reactor. It's offline, it's disabled right now, and apparently there is plutonium gas that is going to escape from the reactor chamber within the next 2 weeks. The scientists can't do anything to prevent it from getting out. And when this happens, we're looking at pretty much devastating consequences, death, and if not serious brain damage to thousands and thousands of people in the perimeter. So that's because this is such an emergency. I'm hoping that you and I can try and work together to get these starburst sunflowers that I know your company has been seeking as well, because we have developed this synthetic vapor which can neutralize the plutonium if we can inject it into the reactor before that gas leaks out. And there are only 10,000 of these left. You know, we had this late frost that killed almost all of them, and we need 8,000 of these starburst sunflowers to make our serum. And as you know, there's Mr. Bandini, that farmer in Italy. He is the only one that has a bulk of these flowers. He's got 8,000 left out of the 10,000 in the world, and I was hoping that you and I could team up here, and instead of being competitors, if we could jointly go after these flowers to get the highest bid in, so that we could save all of these lives. So, what do you think?
well, certainly would like to save lives, but we also need the sunflowers because we have a vaccine for anthrax, not a vaccine, a pill for anthrax, and we've been advised that the government is anticipating another terrorist attack with anthrax. So let me ask a question for you. What are you using out of the flowers? Are you using the entire flower, the stems? I don't know how you make your vapor.
It's out of the petals. We extract this to make our serum. We are using the petals of the flowers. I don't know if you're using other parts. And So now I'm hearing, so you have a government contract because they're anticipating the anthrax. We have a government contract for this imminent threat. So, you know what, Bob? What if we team up on both of them? What if we help each other out and see how many do you guys need?
Well,
And
we also need the 8,000.
you need the 8,000. Do you need the
But
pedals also?
Maybe we can cut a little, cut to something here. What if we were to acquire them all, both of us? Our need is for the seeds.
You
Your
need
need
the
is
seeds.
for the petals.
That would be great if we could try and do that. Let's see if we could come up with some type of joint pricing strategy. This is going to go to the highest bidder, and I think we've got some other foreign interests going after this as well. And honestly, Bob, my hope, which I didn't know about your anthrax, is that I was thinking perhaps if we work together, we could try and get a lot of other contracts where we bring you in and you bring us in. And you know, it can really be both. We can just change the entire dynamic right now that exists between both of our companies.
That could be, but if we go after the 8,000 flowers together, we've got twice what either of us can spend on it, and we can get twice as much. Hopefully, we won't have to spend the entire budget. And then if this works out, then maybe the door will be open for projects in collaboration in the future.
All right, what are you thinking? What were you prepared to spend for your bids?
I'm not sure I'm ready to disclose the budget we have.
Well, we need to do this again on an emergent basis because we need to get the bidding process done, get over there, get those flowers, get them back here, extract, you know, the components we need, make the serum, get it into the chamber, the reactor chamber, and we don't have much time. So I was hoping by just speaking to you and not going to the execs, you know, the C-suite and the board, that you and I could just get this done.
Well, my thinking is that we go together to bid and we agree that we will split the cost equally and that we'll each get the parts we need from the flowers, and getting them sooner rather than later is better. And if there are other parts that we are not using that somebody else in the world wants, maybe we can reduce our cost. The question that I have is for our scientists of whether we can harvest both the petals and the seeds and maybe everything else without destroying each side.
I don't think that would be a problem.
I'm going to interrupt, and I'm sorry because we started the exercise a little late and we're going to have to end it a little early, but you certainly did get awfully far in 5 minutes. Let me just observe, okay, that like the good lawyers that you are, you were able very early, and mainly because Bob asked the right question at the right time, to determine the key to a yesable solution, which is that since one of you needed the seeds and one of you needed the petals, you could accomplish your client's interests independently of the other person. I was a little surprised at the willingness that Felicia had to be open to working and indeed even sharing information about the project, when Bob's company has a history of stealing industrial secrets, right? And Felicia seemed pretty pretty willing to say, oh, by the way, there's anthrax going on, and this is where it is, and this is how we're going to approach it. And because Bob could very well take that information and steal it. But it doesn't.
Well, we had, but Peter, we have the government contract on it, so we're contracted to do that, not them. So
yeah, but my only concern is that you're dealing with somebody who, it seems to me, you would like to reveal as little as possible rather than.
Well, I was looking at it as coming out strong, that being candid, that we've got this threat, you know, and here I am. We have our you know, sordid history, and this is that important that I'm willing to bring you in and confide in you. So I was doing it that way.
Yep. Yep. The interesting is that so many people who do this exercise walk away with 4,000 flowers apiece, not realizing that that's useless to their client. They are unable, and you were able very early, they were unable usually to determine that one person winning was independent of the other person winning, that you could both accomplish it. And that is the main purpose of the exercise.
I have to say, though, I didn't know about the seeds. I was thinking that they were bidding for the flowers because they needed the same parts, the petals too. Right. And so that was my understanding going in.
Yeah, it presents itself as a distributive problem or a competitive problem. You each need 8,000 flowers, and there's only 10,000 flowers, so that, you know, you're screwed. But there is a way to solve it. We're getting close to the very end of this thing, and I just want to give the takeaways for what it is that I was hoping to accomplish. And I'm asking you as mediators sitting in the room to accept certain points that I've tried to make. One of them is most effective mediators listen attentively to the counterparty. Most value-laden outcomes come from collaborative problem solving. And collaborative problem solving in actuality, and you know, take it out of the textbook, what happens is that in caucus, the mediator, you know, since the mediator realizes that this person needs coaching, I see the problem as X. What are your thoughts about solving that problem? Or, you know, without the mediator, if there is actually a trained and intelligent negotiator, they will say, you know, I think where we're hung up is X. Do you have any thoughts about how to fix that? Because I would hate for this, you know, to crater. What's your thinking? And then you listen. Okay? Collaborative problem solving is often started by an explicit invitation, right? If this is the problem, do you have any thoughts about how to fix it, right? And you distinguish respectful professional skills from hard bargaining. We're not being nice, you know, we're being soft on people, but we're being really, really demanding on the problem. Okay, so mediators monitor this process. They listen better than anybody else for clues for the underlying interests. I've never, I think, actually said to a party, tell me what your underlying interests are. You can gather that more indirectly from directly, right? And you coach people, you coach them to clarify what it is they really need and what it is they can give away. What are their business goals? What are their alternatives? What are they willing to sacrifice? What are they willing to exchange? Right? And constantly it's the mediator who makes up for the incompetence of the other side by saying, where did you get that number? Why is that? Tell me more about that. Why isn't that option acceptable? You're doing the stuff that Charlie Brown should have done, right? You're coaxing outcomes from people because you know the Zopa. You actually know from a couple of caucuses what the Zopa is. They don't. So you're coaxing people into the Zopa, you know, and you're encouraging them and you're saying this can settle, you know, this, right? They might not be in a position to recognize the other party's BATNA or the other party's leverage or the other party's RP, and you can assist them in that. As long as you understand intelligently what those terms mean and how they have a role. The thing that you can't control is how sophisticated the other counsel, the counsel are who you're trying to mediate. The challenge for that guy is to get the most out of you. And so many lawyers think the challenge is to convince you that they're right. So the coaching that the mediator does as a facilitator of negotiation, right, is to encourage the people on the other side. Use me. How can I help you? I heard you say X. What did you mean by that? What did you really want out of this? How is it going to work out for you? It's 1 minute to 1, Carl. Huh? What do you think? I really appreciate everybody's cooperation. I enjoyed the exercise. Special thanks to Bob and Felicia. I really am grateful for your doing that. And I hope that this is helpful to you, as I say, just to refresh the basics and refocus what it is you're doing in that room.
Yes, it was an excellent presentation, Peter. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it. And so let me tell everyone about the few upcoming things. Our next webinar will be on two Mondays from now, when Gabrielle Stritch will present on Social Security, some issues that mediators should be aware of. And then on the next CLE webinar is somewhere, and it's about something, and I've lost my piece of paper. So, but it will be on the first Monday of next month. And let me also remind everybody who has purchased the CLE webinar package. It's not too late to wait to purchase that package. And you can always watch a CLE webinar that you have missed on YouTube and then submit the required forms to get your credits. So with that, Peter, thank you very much. It was really a very enjoyable hour, and I thank you.
Thank you.